The tension in room 2154 of the Rayburn House office building was palpable as Elon Musk adjusted his microphone, his expression unreadable. Representative Jasmine Crockett leaned forward, eyes fixed on the tech billionaire. "Mr. Musk, you've repeatedly claimed to be a free speech absolutist, yet your platform seems to protect only certain kinds of speech." The hearing was about to become the confrontation Washington had been waiting for. The committee room hummed with anticipation as the cameras focused on the unlikely adversaries. Musk, dressed in a dark suit that seemed to constrain his usually casual demeanor, sat alone at the witness table. The Republican members of the House Oversight Committee sat to his right, many of them supporters of his takeover of Twitter, now X. The Democrats, led by the fiery freshman representative from Texas, occupied the left side of the dais. "Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee today," Musk began, his voice steady but with a hint of that characteristic impulsiveness that had made him both famous and infamous. "I believe in the fundamental right of Americans to speak freely, even when that speech is uncomfortable or controversial." Crockett, known for her direct questioning style honed during her years as a defense attorney, wasted no time getting to the point. "Mr. Musk, since your acquisition of Twitter, now X, reports of hate speech have increased by nearly 40%. You've personally amplified conspiracy theories and allowed accounts previously banned for harmful content to return. How do you reconcile this with your supposed commitment to making X a platform for healthy dialogue?" Musk's jaw tightened slightly, the only visible indication of his irritation. "Representative Crockett, I reject the premise of your question. The statistics you cite come from organizations with clear political agendas. Our internal metrics show that engagement with harmful content has actually decreased." "Your internal metrics?" Crockett interrupted, her voice rising slightly. "The same metrics that you refuse to share with independent researchers? The same metrics compiled by a company that has fired most of its content moderation team?" The committee room grew quieter, the audience leaning forward in their seats. This was exactly the confrontation they had come to witness. "Congresswoman, with all due respect, you're operating on outdated information," Musk countered, a hint of condescension creeping into his tone. "We've implemented automated systems that are far more efficient than the previous human moderation teams which were frankly enforcing politically biased policies." Crockett's eyes narrowed. "So you're telling this committee that algorithms with no human oversight are better at detecting nuanced hate speech than trained professionals? The same algorithms that your own engineers have publicly criticized as flawed?" Musk leaned back, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "What I'm telling this committee is that free speech is messy. Democracy is messy. If we want to preserve both, we need to tolerate speech that makes us uncomfortable. The alternative is a sanitized version of discourse that serves only those in power." "No one is arguing for sanitized discourse, Mr. Musk," Crockett shot back, her voice cutting through the room. "We're talking about demonstrable harm. We're talking about harassment campaigns coordinated on your platform. We're talking about foreign influence operations that your reduced security team can no longer effectively combat." The Republican chairman of the committee tried to intervene. "The gentlewoman's time has expired." "I'm not finished," Crockett stated firmly, not taking her eyes off Musk. "I have several more questions for Mr. Musk, and I expect answers." The chairman, sensing the political theater unfolding, relented. "The gentlewoman from Texas may continue." Musk's expression hardened. He wasn't accustomed to being challenged this directly, especially not in such a public forum. In boardrooms and on his own platform, he controlled the narrative. Here, under the bright lights of congressional oversight, he found himself on unfamiliar ground. "Mr. Musk, documents provided to this committee show that your company has reduced spending on content safety by over 70%, while simultaneously increasing your personal promotional content on the platform. Do you think it's appropriate to use a communication platform critical to public discourse as your personal megaphone while neglecting basic safety measures. The billionaire entrepreneur shifted in his seat, his composure beginning to crack. Those numbers are misleading. We've become more efficient, not less effective. And as for my personal use of the platform, I use it exactly as any other user would. The fact that my posts receive significant engagement is a function of public interest, not preferential treatment. Crockett laughed, a short, incredulous sound that echoed in the chamber. Any other user? Mr. Musk, you literally own the platform. You've admitted to personally intervening in content moderation decisions. You've publicly attacked users who criticize you. This isn't how any other user behaves. The tension in the room was building. Staff members exchanged glances. Committee members from both parties sensed that this exchange was veering into unprecedented territory. Musk's face flushed slightly, his famous composure beginning to fray at the edges. "Representative Crockett," he replied, his voice lowered but intense, "you're focusing on isolated incidents while ignoring the larger picture. Before my involvement, Twitter was selectively enforcing rules based on political alignment. We've made the process more transparent and equitable." Crockett wasn't backing down. She held up a tablet displaying a series of screenshots. Transparent? Is that what you call personally boosting conspiracy theories about the January 6th riots? Is that what you call allowing known purveyors of election misinformation back on your platform just before a presidential election? Musk's eyes flashed with a cold intensity as he leaned toward his microphone. "Those aren't conspiracy theories, Representative. They're legitimate questions about events that deserve scrutiny. The American people have a right to hear multiple perspectives, not just government-approved narratives." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Several Republican committee members nodded in agreement, while their Democratic counterparts exchanged concerned glances. Crockett remained unfazed, her legal training evident in her methodical dismantling of his defense. "Multiple perspectives is one thing, Mr. Musk. Dangerous falsehoods are another," she countered, swiping to another screenshot. "This post, which you personally amplified to your 90 million followers, was fact-checked by multiple independent organizations and found to contain demonstrably false claims about voting machines. Do you take any responsibility for the real-world consequences when these falsehoods spread?" Musk's composure slipped further, his voice taking on an edge. "Those independent fact-checkers you mention are funded by the same corporate interests that opposed my acquisition of Twitter from the beginning. Their objectivity is questionable, at best." The committee room grew tense as Crockett stood her ground. "So every institution that disagrees with you is compromised? How convenient." "I'm simply pointing out the reality of conflicts of interest," Musk replied, his fingers drumming against the table. "Something this committee might want to examine more closely before accepting these organizations' conclusions as gospel." Representative Jordan from Ohio interjected, "The gentleman has a point. These so-called neutral arbiters of truth have repeatedly shown bias against conservative viewpoints." Crockett refused to be derailed. "My time, Mr. Jordan. I still control my time." She turned back to Musk. "Let's move beyond the fact-checkers then. Your own former employees have testified under oath that content moderation resources have been gutted under your leadership. Are they all part of this conspiracy too?" The tech billionaire's patience was visibly wearing thin. "Former employees who were let go for underperformance have obvious motivations to paint my leadership in a negative light. The reality is that we're moderating content more effectively with fewer resources through technological innovation." "Innovation?" Crockett's voice was incredulous. "Is that what you call it when racial slurs increased 500% on your platform within the first week after you took control? When anti-Semitic content spiked during the recent Middle East conflict?" "Those statistics are cherry-picked and misleading," Musk snapped, his cool facade cracking. "If you look at the broader trends—" "I'm not interested in your cherry-picked broader trends," Crockett interrupted. I'm interested in the harm being done to real Americans right now, like the family of a mass shooting victim who had to endure viral conspiracy theories spread on your platform claiming their child never existed. The chamber fell silent. Even Musk seemed momentarily at a loss for words. You cannot claim to support free speech while ignoring its consequences, Crockett continued, her voice quieter but no less intense. With great power comes great responsibility, Mr. Musk. Don't quote Spider-Man at me during a congressional hearing, Representative, Musk retorted, drawing nervous laughter from some in the audience. We're discussing serious principles of constitutional law. Crockett's expression remained stone-cold serious. Deflection through humor. Another tactic you frequently employ when confronted with the consequences of your actions. The committee. Chairman tried again to restore order. The gentlewoman's extended time has surely expired now. One final question, Crockett insisted, earning a reluctant nod from the chairman. She fixed Musk with a penetrating stare. You've repeatedly claimed that your goal is to create a digital town square for global discourse. Yet you've banned users who criticize you personally while amplifying those who praise you. How is that consistent with your stated principles? Musk's face flushed red. That's a gross mischaracterization. It's a direct question, Mr. Musk, Crockett pressed. Users have been suspended within minutes of criticizing your business practices or personal decisions. Are you using your ownership of a major communication platform to silence your critics while positioning yourself as a champion of free speech? The chamber was electric with tension. Several photographers' cameras clicked rapidly, capturing Musk's expression as it transformed from irritation to barely contained fury. I have never personally ordered anyone's removal from the platform for criticizing me, he stated firmly. That's simply false. Then how do you explain this internal communication? Crockett held up another document. An email from you to your head of trust and safety specifically flagging accounts that were, quote, excessively negative about our new policies, end quote, with instructions to review their status on the platform. Several gasps echoed through the room. A bead of sweat formed on Musk's temple. That email is being taken completely out of context, he replied, his voice tight. I was asking for a review of automated bot networks, not legitimate critics. The email makes no mention of bots, Mr. Musk. It specifically names individual journalists who had published unfavorable articles about your management of the platform. Musk's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. Those individuals were later found to have violated our terms of service in other ways. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? Crockett remarked. They criticized you, then suddenly violations were discovered in their past activity. This is absurd, Musk said, his voice rising. You're constructing an elaborate conspiracy theory, while accusing me of spreading misinformation. The irony would be amusing if it weren't so concerning from a member of Congress. The chairman banged his gavel. The gentlewoman's time has expired. Mr. Massey from Kentucky is recognized for 5 minutes. But before Massey could begin, Crockett interjected. For the record, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit these internal communications as evidence for the committee's consideration. The chairman nodded curtly. Without objection, so ordered. As the documents were collected by committee staff, Musk's attorney leaned over to whisper urgently in his ear. The billionaire's expression darkened as he listened, then shook his head dismissively. Representative Massey cleared his throat. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Musk, I'd like to shift focus slightly. Actually, Musk interrupted, his voice carrying across the chamber despite speaking away from his microphone. I'd like to respond to these misleading accusations before we move on. The chairman hesitated, glancing between Musk and Massey. The gentlewoman's time has expired, but if the gentleman from Kentucky is willing to yield— I am, Massey said. I yield 2 minutes to allow Mr. Musk to respond. Crockett sat back, arms crossed, a look of challenge in her eyes as Musk gathered himself. What Representative Crockett has presented is a perfect example of what happens when snippets of communication are taken out of context to craft a predetermined narrative, Musk began, his voice steadier now. The emails in question were part of a broader discussion about network manipulation and coordinated inauthentic behavior on the platform. He leaned forward, addressing Crockett directly rather than the chairman. You conveniently omitted the preceding emails where my team identified suspicious patterns of activity among certain accounts. This wasn't about silencing critics. It was about maintaining platform integrity. Crockett shook her head slightly, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. Musk noticed, and his eyebrows furrowed. Something amusing, Representative? He asked, his tone sharp. Just wondering which page of the tech billionaire playbook you're reading from, she replied coolly. The one where legitimate criticism becomes a coordinated, inauthentic behavior whenever it's directed at you? Musk's nostrils flared. I've provided access to researchers and journalists to view our moderation processes with unprecedented transparency. Can the same be said for the social media companies your party has consistently protected? My party? Crockett's eyebrows raised. This isn't about partisan politics, Mr. Musk. It's about power and accountability. If this isn't about partisan politics, Musk retorted, then why am I the only platform owner being hauled before this committee? Why not bring in the CEOs whose algorithms actually silenced legitimate news stories ahead of the last election? The selective outrage is telling. The tension between them had become almost palpable. What had begun as congressional oversight had transformed into a personal duel between two strong-willed individuals with fundamentally different worldviews. Mr. Musk, Massey interjected, reclaiming his time. Let me ask you about the broader implications for innovation. Do you believe that this kind of governmental scrutiny discourages technological advancement? Musk turned to Massey with visible relief at the change in direction. Absolutely. The constant threat of capricious regulation creates uncertainty that stifles innovation. Companies spend resources anticipating political whims rather than building better products. Crockett raised her hand. Point of order, Mr. Chairman. The witness is making sweeping claims without evidence. This is my questioning time, Massey objected. The chairman banged his gavel. The gentleman from Kentucky controls the time. The representative from Texas will have an opportunity for follow-up in the second round of questioning. Musk shot Crockett a look that bordered on smug before returning to Massey's question. As I was saying, when government attempts to micromanage speech, it inevitably creates a chilling effect on expression. History has shown repeatedly that censorship, even with good intentions, invariably becomes a tool for entrenching existing power structures. For the next 20 minutes, Republican members lobbed friendly questions at Musk, allowing him to expound on his vision for digital free speech and technological innovation without serious challenge. Throughout, Crockett scribbled notes furiously, occasionally exchanging whispers with her staff. When the chairman finally announced, "We'll now begin our second round of questioning," Crockett was the first to signal her readiness. Representative Crockett is recognized for 5 minutes, the chairman stated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. She straightened her papers with deliberate calm. Mr. Musk, during the break, my staff pulled the complete email thread that you claim was taken out of context. She held up a thicker stack of papers. Would you like to know what we found? Musk's attorney placed a cautioning hand on his arm, but the billionaire brushed it off. By all means, enlighten us, he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The full context makes your position worse, not better, Crockett stated flatly. The thread begins with you personally flagging a journalist's thread, critiquing your management decisions. There is no mention of inauthentic behavior until 3 emails later, after your head of trust and safety pointed out that the accounts didn't appear to violate any platform policies. A flush crept up Musk's neck. I'm not finished. Crockett cut him off. Your exact words were, and I quote, "Find something." These sorts of attacks damage user trust and platform stability. End quote. She looked up from the paper. Does that sound like protecting free speech, Mr. Musk? Or, does it sound like using your power to silence criticism? The room had gone completely silent. Even the typically restless press photographers were frozen, cameras trained on Musk's face as he struggled to maintain composure. "You're presenting a selective interpretation," he began. "These are your words," Crockett interrupted, her voice rising. "Your words, Mr. Musk, not my interpretation. Taken completely out of context? Yes, you've said that, but I have the full context right here." She tapped the document. "Would you like me to read the entire exchange?" "Because I'm happy to do so." Musk's jaw worked silently for a moment before he replied. "What you're doing is creating a show trial atmosphere to generate headlines. This has nothing to do with genuine oversight." Crockett leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "This isn't about headlines, Mr. Musk. This is about accountability, something you seem to demand from everyone except yourself." "That's absurd," Musk retorted, his voice rising. "I've been more transparent about our processes than any platform in history. We've literally opened our algorithm to public scrutiny." "After significant public pressure," Crockett countered, "and conveniently leaving out the parts where you personally intervene. That's not transparency. That's theater." The chairman tapped his gavel lightly. "Let's maintain decorum, please." Musk ignored the warning. "You know what's theater? This hearing. Summoning me to Washington to answer for the crime of allowing Americans to speak freely while actual threats to democracy go unchallenged." "The only threat to democracy in this room," Crockett fired back, "is the man who thinks his wealth puts him above accountability, who believes rules are for others while he gets to play digital kingmaker." Musk's face flushed crimson. He abruptly pushed his microphone away and stood up. "Mr. Musk, you have not been excused," the chairman stated firmly. "I've sat here for nearly 3 hours being subjected to partisan attacks disguised as oversight," Musk responded, straightening his jacket. "I've answered your questions honestly and thoroughly, only to have my words twisted and taken out of context." Crockett remained seated, a picture of composure against Musk's growing agitation. "If asking you to explain your own words constitutes an attack, perhaps the problem lies with your words, not my questions." The chamber erupted in murmurs. Several Democratic representatives nodded in agreement while their Republican colleagues looked increasingly uncomfortable. "You want the truth?" Musk's voice cut through the noise, his composure finally breaking. "Completely. The truth is that your party has been trying to control the flow of information for years through friendly relationships with Silicon Valley. When I disrupted that cozy arrangement by purchasing Twitter, I became a target." "Point of order, Mr. Chairman," another Democratic representative interjected. "The witness is making unfounded accusations rather than answering questions." The chairman nodded. "Mr. Musk, please restrict your responses to the questions asked." "This isn't about partisan politics," Crockett reiterated, her voice steady. "This is about whether the public square should be controlled by unaccountable billionaires who change the rules on a whim." "And you think government control would be better?" Musk challenged, still standing. "History has shown repeatedly what happens when government controls speech. Is that really your solution?" "My solution is accountability," Crockett replied. "Something you clearly find uncomfortable." "I'm accountable to my users and shareholders," Musk shot back, "not to politicians seeking to leverage their power for partisan advantage." The chairman banged his gavel more forcefully. "Mr. Musk, I must insist that you be seated and maintain proper decorum during these proceedings." Musk hesitated, then slowly returned to his seat, though the tension in his body remained evident. His attorney whispered something in his ear, which he again dismissed with a shake of his head. "Mr. Musk," Crockett continued, her time running short, You've repeatedly positioned yourself as a champion of free speech, yet the evidence suggests you're primarily a champion of speech you personally agree with. How do you reconcile that? Contradiction? There is no contradiction, Musk insisted, his voice slightly calmer but still edged with frustration. I've allowed voices across the political spectrum on the platform, including many I personally disagree with. Can you say the same about the social media companies you've defended in the past? I'm not here to defend other companies, Crockett replied smoothly. I'm here to question you about your practices. And the record shows that you've applied different standards to different users based on your personal preferences. That's simply not true, Musk said flatly. The emails we've reviewed suggest otherwise, Crockett countered, as do the experiences of numerous journalists and public figures who found themselves suspended shortly after criticizing you. The chairman glanced at the clock. The gentlewoman's time has nearly expired. Crockett nodded. One final question, Mr. Musk. Given what we've uncovered today about your personal involvement in content moderation decisions, your selective application of rules, and your misrepresentations about platform transparency, do you still maintain that you're a principled free speech advocate rather than simply another powerful man seeking to control public discourse for his own benefit? The room fell silent, all eyes on Musk. For a moment he said nothing, seeming to weigh his options carefully. When he finally spoke, his voice was measured. Representative Crockett, I believe in free speech not because it's easy or convenient, but because it's necessary. Have I made mistakes? Certainly. Has the transition been messy? Absolutely. But I reject the characterization that I've acted in bad faith or abused my position. He leaned forward, matching her intensity. The documents you've cherry-picked don't tell the full story of our efforts to create a platform where all legal speech is protected, regardless of its political alignment. That's a messy, imperfect process, but it's preferable to the alternative, a sanitized information landscape controlled by unelected content moderators or government officials. Crockett's time had expired, but the chairman allowed Musk to finish. You can question my methods or my decisions, Musk concluded, but don't question my commitment to free expression. It's not a partisan issue. It's a human right. And I'll continue defending it regardless of the political cost. The chairman banged his gavel. This hearing is adjourned. As the room began to clear, Musk gathered his papers while Crockett conferred with her colleagues. Their eyes met briefly across the chamber, adversaries who had taken the measure of each other in a public forum. Neither had fully prevailed, but both had made their positions unmistakably clear. Later that evening, as news networks replayed the most heated exchanges, public opinion splintered predictably along partisan lines. Conservative commentators praised Musk for standing firm against government overreach, while progressive voices lauded Crockett for holding a powerful figure accountable. The confrontation had resolved nothing definitively, but it had crystallized the central tension of the digital age. Who ultimately controls the flow of information in a democracy? Private companies, government regulators, or the people themselves? As clips of the exchange went viral, on X, ironically enough, Musk posted a single message. Free speech isn't free if only approved speech is protected. The fight continues. Minutes later, Crockett responded with her own post. Accountability isn't censorship. No one is above scrutiny, especially those with the power to shape public discourse. The battle lines had been drawn in a conflict that would define digital communication for years to come. Today's hearing was just one skirmish in a longer war over the boundaries of expression in the digital age, with profound implications for democracy itself.